All right. 3:03, Tuesday, April 21st, 3 p.m. in the council chambers. Val, please call roll.
Larson.
Here.
Emmer.
Here.
Kelly.
Please bring your mic closer, Tom. Thank you.
Doesn't mean I got it.
Rob. Absent. Holt.
Here.
Sauer.
Present.
Rossing.
Here. Here.
And Mayor Frederickson.
Here.
Thank you.
All please rise. As by request, but a well thought out request, we would also like to take a moment, a little bit of time for a moment of silence for all those affected by COVID, law enforcement, emergency responders, and the frontline workers. We'll observe that now. Thank you. And thank you to them out there that are watching. We do appreciate it. Public comment says received by the mayor, the city clerk for council members. I did not receive any. No one else? Okay. Okay. Steve?
I would love to make one.
Okay.
My last meeting after 8 years. I just wanted to take a moment to thank everyone sitting at this table, every alder person I've ever served with, the employees of the city, and the citizenry for making it quite interesting, if nothing else. And I want to pass one piece of advice, and it's the one piece of advice I always give onto the new alders that will be on this side of the table. It's a very easy job. You're given a couple of choices. You make the one that you think is best, and we move on and we move forward. It's a very easy job. As long as we realize that it's not personal. It's politics. It's feelings, it's thoughts. It has nothing to do with agreeing on a topic, having anything to do with how I feel personally about anyone on the planet. And I wish you all luck, and I really look forward to what's going to be coming out of this room. So thank you.
I guess actually I'm going to take this opportunity too, also as a citizen, not as a mayor, but at the same time, my alderman district is District 7, and never seen it fit to replace the alderman that was there. And thank you for representing me for years as a citizen. And I'd also like to thank Lee as my first appointment to this, for the due diligence he did to his job and the heart he put into his job. We appreciate you, Lee, also. Thank you both. All right, moving forward, mayor's comments. There's a proclamation. It's in your packet if you want to read it, but I'm going to read it out loud. It's the Municipal Treasurers Appreciation Week. The Appreciation Week is April 19th through the 25th, and this is the year 2020. Whereas the office of municipal treasurer is a time-honored and a vital part of local government that impacts the day-to-day life of the citizens. throughout the state, and whereas the municipal treasurer provide the necessary financial information to the governing bodies and agencies at the local, county, and state levels, and whereas the municipal treasurers administer the procedures and keep the financial records that allow governing bodies to carry out its public functions efficiently and confidently. Whereas all municipal treasurers are official custodians responsible for proper management and investment of the public funds. And whereas the 1,853 municipal treasurers and the 72 county treasurers work together to collect all property taxes for their own municipalities and counties, and as well as their local schools, technical colleges, and state. And whereas municipal treasurers continually strive to improve the administration of the responsibilities of the office of municipal treasurers through the participation in educational programs, seminars, workshops, and conferences across Wisconsin. And whereas Governor Tony Evers signed a proclamation on February 5th, 2020, declaring April 19th through the 25th as Municipal Treasurers Appreciation Week in Wisconsin. Now therefore, I, Chris Frederickson, Mayor of the City of Rhinelander, do hereby recognize the week of April 19th through the 25th as Municipal Treasurers Week, and further extend appreciation to our Municipal Treasurer, Wendy Bixby, and to all municipal treasurers for their vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to the communities they represent. This day dated the 13th day of April 2020, as we were to have a meeting that day, signed by myself and Val Foley. I would ask for just a round of applause for our treasurer. I know she's not here. If she sees fit to watch us, Wendy's done us a great service.
Go down to our office.
She's not here. Thank you again, Wendy. All right, next, the proclamation for the GFWC, Rhinelanders Women's Club Federation. Day is April 24th, 2020. It's also in your packet. Let me see if I can find it. 8. Thank you. And I'm going to read this just because, don't tell anybody, but they're my favorite club. City of Rhinelander, Wisconsin, Office of the Mayor. Whereas the GFWC, Rhinelanders Women's Club, a member of the General Federation of Women's Clubs, and its members have enhanced the community of Rhinelander through its commitment to volunteering service, including the Rhinelander District Library, Student Scholars, Rhinelander Area Food Pantry, Art Start, Tri-County Council on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault, and numerous other projects and organizations. Whereas the Women's Club is federated with the General Federation of Women's Clubs of Wisconsin, the Northwoods District, and General Federation of Women's Clubs, the largest organization of volunteer women. And whereas the Women's Club of Rhinelander is a volunteer service organization which has been actively serving the local community for 122 years. And whereas GFWC, Rhinelander Women's Club, works locally and globally to support the arts, preserve natural resources, advance education, promote healthy lifestyles, encourage civic involvement, and work towards world good health, peace, and understanding. Now, therefore, I, Chris Frederickson, Mayor of the City of Rhinelander, call on the citizens of Rhinelander to recognize April 24th, 2020 as GFWC Federation Day, in celebration of their 130th anniversary, the year of the founding of this esteemed organization. And be it further resolved that the body expresses much gratitude to the GFWC, Rhinelander Women's Club, and its members for their continued work in making Rhinelander better for all our citizens. Thank you. And again, I'll take a round of applause for her. All right, number 8 on the thing. Administrative leave for the city administrator, Daniel Guild, will be extended until the next council sees fit to put it on their agenda as a closed session. And that was just to be announced for the sake of the public. I appreciate it. Reports. Oh, wait. No meeting minutes at this time. Reports from the other departments are in your packets. There's nobody besides the clerk here that could add to that. I will turn to her and ask her if she wants to, but I already know that answer.
You got a couple out, there's a couple out in the hall too.
Yeah, they're going to speak on, actually, item number 29. So,
Mr. Mayor, I would recognize that I have not submitted a monthly report in writing. I apologize. I especially apologize to Lee because I wanted to give Lee a monthly written report on a timely manner. But as you know, there's been so many things going on the last 2 weeks that frankly, I didn't even remember until I got here today. So I apologize.
apology accepted.
I will make a motion to accept the reports from departments as presented.
Thank you.
Second, Larson.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Reports from boards, commissions, and committees. There is nothing to report at this time. I believe that there's going to be some Zoom meetings coming up. Otherwise, they have not met. Discussion and approved payment of the bills and claims in the amount of $980,107.
I will make a motion to pay the bills in the amount of $980,107.
Rossing, second.
Any further discussion? Val, please call roll.
Larson.
Aye.
Emmer.
Yeah.
Kelly.
Aye.
Holt.
Aye.
Sauer.
Aye.
Rossi.
Aye.
The ayes have it and motion carries. Unfinished business. As we move into the introduction new business to follow the rules, there's exactly 10 of us in the room right now. So the presentation of the job scale for new hires in the departments with Jim Gossage and Tom Roser will be handled one at a time, and I'm going to step out in between. I will be in the doorway to listen, so that for the people on the live stream, I'm just out of camera. But that will be 10 people in the room. Jim?
Okay, if everybody could reference the handout, the three-page handout with a fourth attached loose sheet, that'd be great. I'd like to bring to your attention some items to consider while you review the current wage structure handout. First off, some facts about the wastewater staff. Most of our staff hold licenses for both water and wastewater. Our staff performs both water and wastewater duties. A lot of cities have separate departments for that. Our guys take care of both on a daily basis. This job requires employees to work with hazardous chemicals such as chlorine, sodium hydroxide, fluoride, and ferric chloride. We are exposed to raw wastewater and all the pathogens it contains on a regular basis. We sometimes work in confined spaces. These confined spaces can be up to 40 feet deep with raw sewage flowing into them that in some cases we simply can't stop while working in there. There are approximately 1,000 different alarm points related to the water and wastewater system that can call us out at any time of the day, 7 days a week, weekends, holidays, whenever. And we respond to those alarms as they are called out. These operators have not had a pay increase in the last 6 years. For the last 8 months, we have been operating with half the staff needed to handle day-to-day operations related to the water and wastewater system. And we have had help from Tom Roser's staff at the Water Department. Two of his guys help us out when they can. One of them is as Tom can spare him. The other individual has been by us on a daily basis for probably for the last 4 to 5 months. This individual that's been with us from the Water Department for the last 4 to 5 months has now been approved for a transfer from Water Department to wastewater. And we feel very fortunate to have him. He has learned all of our operations quickly and has been trained in the lab to fill in when our lab manager is off. As part of this individual's transfer from water to wastewater, pay scales have come into question. The city has been working off a wage structure on your handout, page 3 of your handout. This was put together by Carlson Detman, I believe in 2015. The wastewater operators have been frozen since a year prior to that wage study. So that's where we come up with the 6 years with no pay increase. At that time, that study was done by Carlson Detman. Tim Kingman did appeal the proposed wage at that time, and that appeal was denied. We also requested that Carlson Detman provide their comparables, and those were never provided either. So again, over the last 8 months, our staff has had a significantly increased workload. They have all stepped up and gone above and beyond with no promise or guarantee of any pay increase. So I really think it's time to look into this. I've reached out to comparable cities, including the city of Tomahawk, the city of Merrill, the city of Marshfield, and Rice Lake. You have the summary of these comparisons in front of you on page 2. I'd like you to consider changing the current operator pay grade from line F to line I to bring the wastewater utility wages up to the current average of the comparables. And again, that's only an average of the comparables. So in summary, I'm asking you to review the information that I've assembled. The numbers are based off the average of the comparables, pretty straightforward. And the first sheet of that is the current job posting for the water wastewater operator position. And those numbers were set by Daniel for the wages for the new operator position. I welcome your feedback and thank you for your time and consideration in this long overdue matter. Any questions about not just the wage scale, but wastewater utility items in general?
Steve?
I think it's very well put together presentation, Jim. I think further discussion needs to be had, not only with this particular job title, but 5 years was a long time ago. And so perhaps the entire rate study needs to be readdressed. And it doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be an entirely new rate study that'll cost us a bunch of money. It could very well be reassessed by simply having department heads make a couple of phone calls and see where other departments are at. The rate grid, as you can see on that 3rd page of the handout, the rate grid is very simple. Perhaps it just means that there are some positions that need to move up. Perhaps there are some positions that are right where they need to be. But it's probably time to do some homework all around. And that's your problem.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
It's our opportunity, Steve, not our problem.
Next, Tom Roser is going to speak.
Mine's not quite as well thought out as Jim's, but when we did advertise for these positions, right there, the wage scale we advertised at was very enticing to some very talented individuals. And now that we have gone through and interviewed them, my fear is when we do make them an offer, that all of a sudden we're not very attractive anymore. If we go by this wage scale, start out at the current low point is $19 per hour, and that is not competitive in this line of work. 2019 survey results that are in front of you right now, that comes from rural water. They do the study every year. The median is 2780 for that our population. That's an average. I mean, you're getting hundreds of towns reporting on these, so those are facts. The high's probably pretty high, and the low is probably pretty low, but the average is the average. So my fear is in not just water, not just wastewater, but I'm talking about the street department employees too. We used to get 90 applicants for the street department, and we're lucky to get 5 now. And that's all based on this wage scale. And when you have quality employees operating equipment, and you know the difference. More gets done, less gets damaged, and it's noticeable to everybody. So I'm backing up Jim. Jim does a great job. He cares about his employees. We all care about the employees. And when things are getting damaged out on the street, we all know it. But that's skill. And some people have it, some people don't. Sometimes you can teach people it, but operating an end loader, backhoe, that's skill. And if you can bring those skills in, it reduces training time, injuries, a lot of things. So I just wanted to reiterate what Jim is saying, that I think we need to definitely move on that wage scale or adjust it. Yes, Tom?
Tom, are most of these employees cross-trained from water to wastewater? So if you have somebody calls in for a day or 3, that you can pull somebody from wastewater for your department?
Well, this wasn't always the case. This just started when Jim took over, because I think Jim and I have a pretty good relationship.
Okay.
We recognize cross-training as a value to the city, and but that wasn't happening. And this is happening now because Jim's so short-staffed. And I've got employees that are very motivated, like to learn. Every day they want to learn, and they learn every time they go out there. So it made it easy because they cover the on-call shifts for them, so they're not running a 2-man rotation. And right now it'd be a 1-man rotation had we not sent anyone there. So the cross-training is a no-brainer for all of us. I also send guys to the street department because I have some very mechanical guys too. Same guys Jim's using, and they're working on equipment, catching up on punch lists, so.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I'll have you two stay out in the hall though, in case we have questions, because we're going to further the discussion a little bit.
Okay, I want to thank Lee and Steve for your service too. I was out in the hallway, I didn't get to wave and clap for you, but thank you guys. Thank you all.
One of the reasons I made sure this hit this agenda is because there's obviously a history here that we understand as the standing council before we move into new people again too. Brought up in the fact that they've been understaffed and taking care of themselves with a brotherhood of an attitude has been appreciated by myself, that beyond measure. Honestly, as you sit as leaders and you look at the people that are trusted around you that can get this stuff done, you haven't heard a problem coming from our waste plant, have you? And it's not because they haven't had problems. It's because they took care of it. We looked in this last week or whatever to fill positions We looked at the advertisement that went out for those positions. The advertisement that went out for those positions was at a higher wage than what we were able to even move them into in the Carlson-Detman scale. So obviously, we even advertised with, I don't even know if that would be, is that false advertising? And you don't have to answer that one. Yep, don't answer that one. But at this point, when we're looking for that group of people, and they've done the cross-training, even when it looks at the applicants that were coming in, once again, they were looking to cross-train and do more with less. This is a dedicated group, and I would accept a motion to allow our department heads to move forward in looking at their staff and adjusting them as they see fit. You don't have to. You can make a,
I will make a motion to allow department heads to adjust the wage scale rates as they see fit within budget.
Larson, second.
here's a motion, a second. Now discussion. Go ahead.
I just had to throw in that in budget.
Yeah, no,
Just-
great,
just-
great
just-
ad, great
yeah.
ad.
But I guess my question, and maybe this is something, I guess a question for Steve as far as, really is this our call? Is the Carlson-Detman so ingrained in the city hiring process that department heads are forced, or is it simply a simple policy decision? Or, I mean, I'm not sure what the, do we have to make this motion and do we have to vote on this motion?
Well, three things I want to, number one is, when I saw this, the first question I asked is, when did this use of this formula, the formula that you have before you, when did that become used? And I went back and I did find that you did, as a council, vote to utilize their findings as the basis of establishing your wage scales. I mean, you formally did that at a meeting of this board. So in that sense, you've adopted their scale as a benchmark or as a platform that you're supposed to be operating off of. You've made that decision. Now, that creates a benchmark, that creates a platform that you're supposed to be working within. The second thing I'd point out is that you did create a budget for every department, and you do allow your department heads to manage their budgets subject to the supervision of this council, and also the city administrator, or in this case, the acting city administrator. So that is a kind of a caveat to your motion, because your motion would be an open door motion that basically said that you could just ignore the benchmark, you could ignore the recommendations of the city administrator, and I don't think that under your rules, the way I'd read that motion from previous years, that you could do that without making a new motion to say that we are no longer going to use these benchmarks, we're in establishing something in its place, because you have set that as a policy. I don't know if that answered your question, but it is what I was able to discover.
If I may, I guess that kind of brings it back full circle to when this rate study was done. We approved it, I believe, was it 2015 when we approved the rate study?
I was thinking it was 2016,
It
but
might be
I could be
2016,
wrong.
but it was the prior year's numbers, either way, because they were, and it actually might have been the prior year's numbers, because it took that long to get the thing through the process. I mean, Tom was around, it was quite a long process to get there. So it might have been 2014 numbers. Now, one of the things that was discussed was that these rates would adjust with time, but what we didn't discuss was how the rates would adjust with time and where the rates would go with time. Because theoretically, if we were to say we're only going to use this rate study, period, in 15 years, no one is going to work for the city because we're now working with 20-year-old numbers and inflation alone is going to make them less reliable. So would it be a better idea to move forward with increasing the scale as a whole, or looking at just simply like I said before, adjusting per department head recommendations and local comparables? Or, I mean, I guess I don't know what the right way to correct the issue would be.
Well, I think that if you read the motion, as I read it, it established the study as your basis and your the structure you were going to use moving forward. I had the impression from reading that you were going to, at least biannually, you were going to review those numbers and change those numbers. That seemed to be the intent that was in that, but I could not find anything where you did that after you established that. So what you've effectively done is you established a wage rate system based upon 2014 or 15, whatever the year might have been, and you haven't adjusted the base rate since then. So you're asking me a policy question, and the policy question is up to you. The legal question, there's nothing that says you can't change it. There is something that says you were going to use this, and every person should have used it in 16 and 17. I just wonder if 18, 19, and 20 it really was still supposed to be used, but there's nothing that I could find that would indicate that there was a change or a change of policy.
Is it in response, or otherwise I'm going to take Tom? Tom?
No, all I want to remind everybody is that we're probably going to have to include public works also and across the board.
The motion that's on the table
But-
was that our department heads could look. And even,
Right,
even
but
with that, I guess what I'm talking about
And
is,
they're coming back to us with numbers?
his motion is as long as within budget, they can make that decision. One of the things I can tell you is I'm not a micromanager, so I allow my managers to manage. And then if they have too many expensive employees and they got to send one home or whatever the case might be, that might be the case. But at the same time, allowing them to do it. I knew when we looked for employees to replace, it was impossible. Even no matter what your feeling is with Daniel Gill, when he put out the ad, it was impossible because the wage he put in that ad was above what that says. What I'm looking to do maybe is even allow for, because we don't have positions that change that often, is that flexibility for our department heads to be able to adjust, because to go through a whole, and I don't know what we paid Cottenham Butler, do you know? Was that on there?
No, it wasn't in there.
But why pay them if he can look for that wage around here and give an example in a day? But anyway, Steve.
I would like to make a friendly amendment to my motion. I would like to make a motion to add the phrase, until the full city council reviews and modifies the wage study as presented.
I would second that amendment, or if you need an amendment, motion, second.
Because I feel as though that then says, okay, the department heads can go outside of the boundaries for the time being because we need to get some people in the door, but the whole thing needs to be looked at. And so it gives department heads some freedom for right now, but it kind of places it on the shoulders of council to make a decision as to exactly how to move forward in modifying it.
Steve, would you repeat that? I have, until the full city council reviews it and modifies.
The wage rate scale.
Once you're done, can you read that back, Val?
There's a friendly amendment, motion by Sauer to add the phrase, until the full city council reviews and modifies the wage rate scale.
just in the role of parliamentarian, if nothing else, and for legal clarity, there's an understanding here, I think, that when you talk about the department heads have the right, as long as they're within budget, you're referring to their budget line item that is wages and salaries, correct? You're not referring to their entire budget.
Yes, I would. Would you like me to add that caveat?
No, I
as
just,
well?
I'm
But
for
no,
everybody here.
That's
Yeah.
what I would presume, that we're not going to give everybody raises and then not buy a dump truck, or something along
They're
those lines.
5 months into their budgeted year with 2 people down, that should allow it.
Well, and that's,
Yeah, I want the public to know and everyone else to know that I thought the intent of your motion was that you would only be talking the line item budget that was wages and salaries, and that was where they could operate in, that they couldn't go and use something from another part of their budget to supplement wages and salaries in order to go beyond the parameter of what your motion was. And I thought it would be appropriate that there's a public record of that so that some other council person starting up later today would have concrete knowledge of what you intended and what this group voted on.
We appreciate the clarity.
I have to have some purpose.
Can I read this back in its entirety?
Friendly.
The amendment first. Yeah, Lee?
Based upon what this says in the agenda, can we actually vote on this? This simply says presentation. And
Yeah.
the following items simply say discuss. None of them indicate action.
At the beginning of the agenda, it does say that anything we discuss at this can lead to action.
All right, I just wanted to clarify that.
So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Do we have a second to this friendly amendment?
Yeah,
I did.
it was Ryan Rossing. When you're ready, Val, motion carries. Back to the first motion. Any further discussion on that?
Okay, so now you're voting on the motion as amended, just so there's clarity there.
Yes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Discuss the email received by the mayor from the business owner of the city of Rhinelander concerning out-of-area customers, and actually it was businesses, coming into the area for area business. Val, did you get any more clarity on that email? And if not, I'll discuss the one that came, that I believe it was. Okay.
No, I haven't.
There was a discussion about a restaurant selling in the parking lots from another area. Basically, you could call into X that was in Tomahawk or wherever, and they would deliver to a parking lot for pickup. The concern was obviously, do they get the Pratt tax? Where are they paying their tax for that to do business here, or anything in that motion? Now, given the change of the landscape in COVID, with it being curbside pickup or anything else, would these customers be going there normally and they're just using now a parking spot for it? And one, is this creating a hazard? Number two, is it creating a tax problem? Everybody would hope, at least my hope would be, that it would be done before it actually was considered a problem. That being the case, it's been brought out for the second time, so go ahead.
I have an additional question. We have an ordinance regarding transitory businesses using parking lots. How does that impact our transient business? Is that the transient business?
transient vendor license.
Transient venture license for the city.
I'm gonna turn and ask, the attorney was worried about having something to do.
No, I mean, if you license the vendors when they come into the community, which you have a right to do, which you've done, then once you've done that, you can't then say, but only people that live in the city limits can have vendors, locations within parking lots. There was a part of the U.S. Constitution called full faith and credit that says that we can't create laws just for our own, and protectionism. You could certainly give people in the community a break on the fee if you wished, whereas you charge somebody from somewhere else more. I mean, that's kind of like fishing licenses, but I don't think that's in your ordinance that way. I think it's just simply you have to be licensed to, you have to register to do that.
Steve?
And I would think by registering to do that, you would confirm that there are taxes being withheld and whatnot, or not so much. I'm seeing Val raise her hand.
I just wanted to add that nobody has come in for a transient merchant's permit. And normally that is what happens. How they register, I don't know for taxes, but I do know they pay $100. And everybody, whether they live in the city or out of the city, is bound by that. If they are selling from someone else's property. And they have to get okay, and it has to run through the police department first.
And then that would almost become an enforcement issue at that point, where if they're selling off of their own property.
Absolutely. As acting right now, Administrator, I will address this with Lloyd to look into. Is that feasible?
Sounds appropriate.
Thank you.
Yes, whoever the person is that has the question, if they can identify who the party is, it's a whole lot easier to enforce it than to just generically say to the police department, go out and start checking parking lots. So I say that only so the public can hear that, because that makes the job that Lloyd or the
Yeah.
sheriff, or police department would have a lot easier.
I can tell you that from the governing body, governing as closely as how people live their lives is really strange when how you live your life changes real quickly. So that's made it somewhat difficult, yet at the same time direction is needed and we need to stay on top of those things. So I apologize for letting this slip up to this point, but we will take care of it. Appreciate it. Moving on, discuss a letter from Terry and Judy Nosser to remove the snow removal charge of $260 for the property at 810 Lincoln Street. This is in your packet. It was brought before you about a month ago. And basically, I just did not want to pass on whether or not we were going to forgive this charge or if we were going to let it be as it stands. So I thought that discussion and movement should happen based on this council. Tom?
My feeling is that $260 that Nossers are talking about buys a lot of goodwill. And it's pretty cheap. And it's the same with the letter coming up with the trailer court. That's $130. That's just buys a lot of goodwill. And I think we should just let it go.
Yeah. I'm going to give you just a brief history on this so that we understand the goodwill. The goodwill had to do with the fact that Lincoln Street was becoming very pedestrian friendly. That being the case, when identifying the reasons, it would be, basically properties that are for sale or some of the other issues. But one of the complications of is when we expanded that road and plowing that snow and then it being hard packed or frozen because it would come up and they would plow it 3 times during that day. Yet we still needed to be pedestrian friendly. So this year was one of the first years I believe that we went out and definitely handed out the tickets for it. For the purpose of, it will be enforced, please address it how you see fit. I can tell you from that, I understand the goodwill and I don't have a problem with the goodwill. That's why the council votes and I don't. Yet at the same expenses, because they're on Lincoln Street, that property also will sell for more because it's on Lincoln Street. So the problems also come with benefits. And I'm not excusing that, but that's why I would address where this issue came from and why it's before us. David.
Well, I was going to make a motion, but I wanted to clarify whether or not Tom had actually, was that a motion, Tom, to
No.
waive that fee?
No, sorry.
Okay, then in that case, I will make a motion to waive these fees with the stipulation that the council moving forward is going to address this for a long-term solution. We have until hopefully we have until next winter for another snow event. And so we've got time to do that. But I agree with Tom Kelly that this buys a lot of goodwill. and it's not a significant amount, to put this to rest and then come up with a long-term solution.
Hey, second? I'll take a second. Larson, second? All right.
I guess, and that's, I mentioned this last time, and I'm going to throw it out there again. There has been a lot of confusion as to who takes care of the sidewalks on Lincoln Street. There was a time when the city, and I believe there are certain parts of Lincoln that the city still does take care of the snow on. If the city is not going to do that anymore, then that needs to be said. It needs to be publicized, and it needs to be acknowledged. If the city is going to continue doing it, then we cannot fine people for having not done it. One of the things that I would really look to see come out of this would be some sort of report from the Public Works Department as to the current practice and history of taking care of these sidewalks. Because I cannot remember where the line is, but the city does take care of a chunk of those sidewalks on Lincoln Street. But where does it stop, I couldn't currently tell you.
It has routinely, this is from the department meeting, it has routinely gone out to at least twice, 3 times a year and cleaned up all of it regardless. That being the case, we were discussing those issues, budgetary issues that came with it, how to address them from the department, and as the mayor bringing this forth to you, even the smallest forgiveness of something, I feel should come before council so they do understand where we are making expenditures and or stretches on those issues. So that's why it was before you that way. Tom?
Are we including item 32 also?
We can just hurry up and make that. We did not include it, but we can add that quickly afterwards if that's the case, because it's.
Just need a separate motion.
Lee?
I think that if the city is going to proceed with fining people for not doing their snow, they have to document what goes on out there a little better than has been documented, because I believe the rule is within 24 hours
Correct.
of the snow event. But what is the snow event? Is the snow event the third time the city plows and rolls the snow on the sidewalk? Is it when the snow comes down? Is it the first time? I mean, I could see where the city plows the snow. 24 hours later, the plow comes back through and plows it again. Is that another snow event, or what is it? And if they already did their sidewalk, 24 hours it gets plowed again, whose responsibility is that? I think that has to be documented better.
Yeah, it's kind of like even the wage study. If it never did get looked at 2 years and another 2 years and another 2 years, we're 6 years behind or 8 years behind on it. So it's the same type of concept. If we don't understand what that ordinance originated from moving forward, it's hard. Andrew?
I know we're talking about Lincoln Street, but when we do look into this more, would it be for all sidewalks throughout the city?
I believe the discussion that was had during what we'll call critical points of the winter where people were upset was reestablishing how we plow and clean during the summer. That was the recollection I had of that department head meeting as far as that goes. That being the case, it'd be great to look at and spend that time moving forward. I'd actually ask you on a personal basis to make sure that happens. If it's halfway through the summer, we haven't had that discussion yet. Because as things come down the pipe, you absorb them and move on, but you're correct, that needs to happen.
Yeah, no, it just goes along with what Lee said. What is an event or?
Absolutely. Ryan?
Yeah, I agree with Lee. You make a lot of good points. We need to establish that. And I also think with a lot of the changes that we've had here this last year, I'd like to get some creative ideas in Lincoln Street in general with just the road clearing. There's stuff we can branch out and try and do that maybe would alleviate some of the snow that's on the side, get rid of it, plow it to the middle. Work with Dan and the Public Works Department to see if some of that would just help alleviate some of these issues with the sidewalks.
All right, thank you. So there's a motion on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it, motion carries.
Just so there's an understanding that this is a one-time event based upon statement of we need to promote some goodwill, and that this is also predicated on that there will be a study. I don't want this to become precedential, because there are other people that did get
Bill,
billed this winter that paid those bills, and you have to understand that you're treating people differently, and anytime you treat people differently, you open up Pandora's box. So just to make the council very cognizant, we've limited this at this time to Lincoln Street, these properties, under these special circumstances, and that's why you.
this one time.
Yes.
Steve?
Absolutely. I think there's a big difference between Lincoln Street when we're sometimes doing it for them and a side street in a residential area where the city has never cleared snow and has no history of clearing snow. And because it does happen, and to my knowledge, they go out with a ruler. I mean, and show, there are a lot of pictures for the actual, before someone gets billed, because we do the same thing with grass in the summertime. There's a lot of documentation, but it's a very different thing when it is a street that we admit to taking care of occasionally, and the entire thing being extremely unclear.
So you want a separate motion for item?
Number 32, I'll announce it
All
out
right, I'll
loud.
make that motion that we waive the charge for the Woodland Heights Mobile Home Park
On Lincoln Street.
on Lincoln.
There's a motion on the floor.
Holt, second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? These are, I guess they do have a bill or a dollar amount. I'm going to back up and just ask for a roll call on both of them, just because,
Good idea.
yeah, I'm just making sure. Val, please call roll.
Well, let's understand, the vote now is, do you approve both of those motions, knowing that there is a financial element to it, so that you don't have to vote on both of them, but you're voting now to support your previous vote, which I believe was unanimous in both cases, and now that you understand that there is a financial component to it.
Correct. Val?
Do we need a motion for that?
No.
Okay.
He's just clarifying from
Well-
parliamentary procedure. I'm backing up saying that it needs it because of a dollar
Yeah, I
amount.
agree.
He's saying that the vote's already carried to do it. Now it's acknowledging that it's a dollar amount.
Emmer,
Yes.
Kelly,
Aye.
Holt,
Aye.
Sauer,
Aye.
Rossi.
Aye.
And Larson.
Aye.
All right, the next one we'll need a little bit of help from our lawyer with, just because, and they had to do with the water utility complaint where a patron had paid to an account that was mismarked on their automatic pullout from their bank, whose error that was, and then therefore the property it got placed on only came to fruition or to light when that property sold, and then we notified the payer that they no longer needed to pay, and they're like, wait a minute, I didn't have that property. So that being the case, what's the governing body of water? PC,
PSC.
the PSC had, yes, Public Service Commission told us, gave us an opinion that we did not need to return those funds to this person because they did pay on an active account. Yet at the same time, I looked for the governing body of our council to decide what they would like to do with that.
How much money are we talking?
I think, it sounds to me like it's somewhat of a civil issue. We collected the money that needed to be collected. If the money needs to be some sort of a small claims action on somebody else's term to recoup their costs, it seems to me like that would be their obligation to get that fixed on their end.
I don't doubt it's not criminal. It would be a civil action, which is perfectly fine, and it would actually probably take us out of the equation because we did nothing but receive that money. This would be, once again, that venture towards goodwill, if you would. But at the same time, you know, it's up to this body to decide if that was the direction they'd like to take. Steve?
What are the actual what's the dollar amount we're talking about here? Do we know? I mean, that would be a key.
Well,
If I said $630,
let me interject, because when you start playing the dollar game, you also set precedent. You don't want to forget that if it's $1 or it's $1 million, you're setting a precedent for how you're going to deal with problems such as this. And what PSC is saying is the person's account had been set up and the money was coming out of that account. We didn't set up that account. We didn't do that as a city. And they have a responsibility for their own account. And since the money was coming out of their account, I don't care how much it is, since the money was coming out of their account, there's nothing we as a city can do as far as reimbursing them, because we legitimately got money to cover that. Now, if somebody else should have been paying that, that's not really the city's ability or issue to resolve. So I just don't want you, because it's, let's say it's only $25, you say, oh, that's no big deal, but it's a Pandora's box thing, and I really want you to understand that, and that's my job. And now you can tell me, too bad, so sad, we're into goodwill today, but my job is to tell you that the dollar amount is not really a significant factor legally. You make your own decisions as far as policy.
Lee?
The way I understand this is, they had a wrong account number on what they paid. But that wrong account number was an account number of the city's, so they essentially paid somebody else's bill. Consequently, theirs didn't get paid. And I think that their complaint
Go ahead.
is with the person that literally took their money, because that person almost had to know that their account was getting paid. I think their complaint should be with whoever is that other account holder, and they should get their money back from them,
See,
not from the city.
That's one of the tricky parts of this too, is when we have over non-paid accounts, it doesn't get addressed right away. And I found that out when it came into foreclosed properties. There can be a huge water bill attached to it from years, and you're like, okay, well, how did that happen? You know, because we should be on top of that too. So there is a accountability glitch that happens there. Now, in this, that responsibility is not ours, you're correct, until either the property's foreclosed or once again when it's sold, and then the bill came to us, we identified it and said, oh, that's no longer yours to worry about as far as that goes. Problem is it went back to the check holder, not to the property owner. Steve?
I guess I'm wondering, I've never heard of this happening before.
Right.
Has this ever happened before? If we're setting, it has happened before. Can we ask for some history from the clerk?
On occasion, people will put the wrong water account number down. They do not put an address down as to what they're paying. It might be a totally different name than the owner of the account, and we have nothing to match it up to except that account number. So it gets credited to the account number. Might be the wrong one. We have a lot of them that we have to try to research because they put a totally wrong number down. They've transposed numbers and we have absolutely no idea, and they live out of town. So it makes us have to do a lot of detective work in order to apply sometimes. And sometimes we don't, because the account number comes up, they paid, it's fine. In this particular case, I do believe that this property was owned by the payor's parents, and they let it go back to the bank for foreclosure. But she kept paying on that account number. And we had no idea. She could have been living in there. She didn't have an address on the checks that they were generated by a pay from your credit union or your bank, where you'd go online and pay, and where it says, make a memo or a note. She put that account number. We even asked, where did you get that account number? And she said, I don't know. But she kept paying on it, when in reality, I believe that property went back to the bank. And,
Dave?
but the bill was being paid.
David?
Yeah. I understand that it might not generate lots of goodwill, but I agree with Lee that, and also that there is a larger accounting problem here is not germane to this particular issue. This particular issue that we have to decide on, I don't believe, I'm not hearing the city having anything to do with this, in fact. And so we don't want to set a precedent when we don't have to do anything. This is somewhat of a user error. And I'm willing to bet that many of us, if we thought back on our lives, could think to times when we made similar errors, and had to correct them and had to do our diligence with our own accounting. It's an unfortunate situation, but I don't think that the city has any responsibility here. And so the other aspects that you're raising, sort of as a broader, more general, abstract discussion about accounting and
They're more
utilities
for
is
historical
fun, but
reference.
it's not relevant to this, right?
Steve?
Negative motions are not advised.
Correct. So, moving on. Number 34, Mayor's Extension of Emergency Declaration to May 26th, 2020. The declaration is in there. We just extend the date if you see fit.
Is this an announcement?
No, it's actually a request for a motion. The reason being is, my first declaration is when it's an emergency, then I can do it at any point. Then it's ratified or accepted by council, which you did. At this point, it's now just extending it, so therefore I'm asking the permission of those privileges to me as a mayor that come from the emergency declaration if we can't meet, if we can't do anything. Are we still able to move forward if it was to get worse or anything else? So basically, it's just extending the timeline through this.
I will make a motion to accept extension of the mayoral declaration of emergency through May
26th. It's
26th
Tony Evers. And
as presented.
Holt, second.
there's a motion and a second. Discussion. Ryan?
I guess I don't have a problem with extending it right now, but I don't want us to be in a longer situation than what the state of Wisconsin is. Obviously, I think all of us think that we need to get things moving and want to take care of our people and our businesses. So if we can change this down the road if need be.
Tell you the truth, even after if it's voted upon and accepted, and you want to ratify it at the next meeting, you can do whatever you want with that, as far as like divvying up the tasks or oversights or anything else that you see fit. It's just covering us if that doesn't happen. Lee?
I think you should probably read change the last line to read, this declaration of extension of the state of emergency, and put today's date or whatever date to enact it, not the 20th of March.
Correct. In your packet, it wasn't even really the declaration. It was just more or less so that everybody understood the parameters of which I was asking.
But let's make, is it on? Yeah, let's make sure, though, that, I want to be concise, as like Lee points out, that you're taking and extending the declaration, not necessarily the March 20th declaration, you're extending the emergency declaration until May 26th. I mean, you could also put in a caveat if you wanted that said, or unless the governor would relieve the state of its, but I'm not here to make motions, but I do agree with Lee's comment. Let's get the 20th out of there so there's no misunderstanding.
Tom?
The caveat would be, we can revisit this if the governor backs up from the 26th. of
We,
May.
we meet every 2 weeks, and you can put it on there at any point. You know, and if he, yeah, you could put it as Governor Evers extends and/or otherwise. I don't care. It was just basically to cover us.
Yeah.
So would you like to amend your motion, or are you all right with it?
I just don't want the people of Rhinelander to think, oh, this is gonna be, we're gonna be out doing this longer than what the state of Wisconsin is. So somebody that's not sitting here watching this meeting and hearing our discussion about it is gonna say, you know, Rhinelander is off its rocker because they're gonna be longer than the state is.
Okay. So would you like to make a friendly amendment?
Steve, go ahead, Steve, whatever
No,
you
I
want to
was,
say.
I was just going to say, so.
Go ahead.
Friendly amendment to,
Just to include,
or
not,
until the governor's.
yeah,
Follow state guidelines.
Could I suggest that the language of it simply to be in accordance with the state guidelines?
You can make that friendly motion.
I will make a friendly, amendment to include the statement in accordance with the state of Wisconsin guidelines. So if they change the May 26th date, then we change the May 26th date.
Sauer, second.
So we will, any further discussion, we'll take the vote on the amendment first. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. And now we will vote on the original motion with the amended portion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. Next, PFAS update, Lee Emmer. I don't know if you saw this, Lee, before you even asked. It is on the city website now for all the PFAS results from its beginning. So those are available. The impression offered from our attorney when it came to releasing that also was just understanding that we were not there to give technical reasoning for any of those results or anything else. They're strictly just the results. So as a public looks at it or anything else, that's on their own accord with their own knowledge according to the discoveries with PFAS as they come now. We are not interpreting them and or giving that information as a guideline in any way, shape, or form. Is that what you were looking for, or do you have other questions?
No, that's what I was looking for. I wanted the public to get some information on what's going on with PFAS, because I didn't think we'd gotten any for quite some time.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah,
No,
so
that's
all results are there. They're not easy to decipher, and took quite a while to download because there's a lot of tests, but yeah, they're there. Steve, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, yeah, I mean, the big concern that we had in looking at this was the question of...
Steve, hold on.
It keeps going off on me. Now it's on. I can hear it. I've turned a lot of things off in my life, but never a microphone. But the reality is that we want to make sure that people are not misinterpreting, but we want people to have the information available to them. And the whole PFAS investigation, as I think everybody in the state knows, kind of slowed down real quick with the virus. But that doesn't mean it's not going to come roaring back this summer. I mean, I know the Counties Association just put out a whole publication on PFAS in the state of Wisconsin. I know the governor is still very interested in the topic, and the DNR is still very interested in the topic. So the big concern I had with releasing all these data was it's really hard if you're not a scientist.
Just went out.
It's not, it went out.
This one's almost dead.
It's really hard if you're not a scientist to interpret those numbers. But the other thing that is good is the numbers are there, and you can continue on the website, and you can continue other resources will help you define that. But the good news is we're putting it out there for people to look at, so.
Thank you. Any future agenda items?
I have one.
Okay.
In the next meeting or two, I'd like to have a discussion slash possible action item on some changes to the downtown tree, Brown Street tree planting area. If we could talk about that, I think it would be beneficial.
I would also encourage you at this time, and I know, based on our policy and procedure, the issue of dealing with our staff as it says, is hard, and this forum doesn't allow us to have that dialogue with Dan being here and or otherwise. So if you have emails you want to send me that I can move on to Dan in the meantime, so if we report and we're like this, you're getting the actual answer from the department head that it's appropriate, because this just doesn't allow for a real good dialogue continuation. Anything else? And we're adjourned. Can't even shake your hand there, Lee, or?
Well, thank you, Lee. Take care.
Yep.
Thank you, Lee.
Yep, you bet.
Oh, I gotta sign this thing.
If you turn that off, I can't mic drop it.